Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Michelle Fondin. I'm the author of Twin Flame Romance, The Journey to Unconditional Love, available in paperback, Kindle, and Audible books. If you're new to my channel, welcome! Thank you for subscribing below. Click on that bell, scroll up to all for all notifications, and please give the video a thumbs up. I do readings! Twin flame readings, romance, personal, life path and purpose, 30, 60, and 90-minute readings. Please go to my website, fondinwellness.com, to book your reading. Now, of course, this week we are giving to lafoodbank.org. Now, this past week, only one reading was booked, so I'm going to extend it until the end of the month in order to give a better donation to LA Food Bank. So please, if you're planning on getting a reading anyway, this week is the best time to actually book that reading, even if it's not for this week, if it's for next week or the week after. These charities can really use your help, and so I'm giving $5 for every 30-minute reading booked, $10 for every 60 and 90-minute reading booked. And again, the proceeds for those readings in those amounts are going to lafoodbank.org. Today we are talking about unconditional love is not being a doormat. This came to me because, and of course, like, format's a little bit different here on this table, but I have notes and I just thought it was going to be a little bit easier to read the notes. But this came to me because there's a lot of confusion surrounding what unconditional love is. And I know I was greatly confused for years and years as I was in a particular relationship with someone who consistently stomped on my boundaries. And of course, I'm not an innocent party in that because I didn't understand unconditional love. I thought that unconditional love meant continual forgiving and going with that person even though they were continuously treating me as if I were a doormat. It wasn't until several years later that I really understood the principle and what that means, and in part, that was meeting my twin flame when I realized, oh, this is what unconditional love is, in the sense of it also means setting your boundaries and staying true to your own values. What I did, because I didn't want to give you guys my opinion, but I wanted something to back it up. For that, I've got the Bible. This is the New Living Translation of the Bible, and I know a lot of you are not Christian or do not follow the Christian faith or religion, but these words ring true no matter what. No matter what your belief system is, these words very much ring true. They make a lot of sense. This is what I'm going to go by to explain this to you guys a little bit better when you're really on the fence about being unconditionally loving and then kind of spilling over into being walked all over by somebody. And so I really want you guys to understand the precepts of what love actually is and what unconditional love in particular actually is. In my book, this one, it says The Journey to Unconditional Love, I actually do touch upon this a lot. I really talk about the differences in unconditional love. And in my video, which is 10, I believe it's 10 signs that your DM is ready for reunion, I really explain a lot of these principles about keeping the boundaries, keeping self-respect, and understanding that unconditional love does not mean allowing somebody to walk all over you. There is a vast difference. I'm going to take some Bible verses in order to better explain it to you guys, because these are spiritually and divinely guided. These come from God, and they are, in fact, a beautiful way to explain the principle of unconditional love. The first one, and I've quoted this before in a couple other videos, and it's from 1 Corinthians 13. These are verses 4 through 7. So if you go, even if you Google it online, it's 1 Corinthians 13 verses 4 through 7. Now the translations might be slightly different, but they're generally the same meaning, even though the words may be replaced by synonyms. So the first one says, love is patient. Love is kind. I really want you guys, and I'm going to stop at each sentence or two just to explain what unconditional love is. Basically, the Apostle Paul, who was Saul, if you guys don't know the story of the New Testament in the Bible, but Saul, his name was Saul, and he persecuted Christians, meaning like he crucified Christians, That was his job for the Roman government. He actually like chased down Christians, newly found Christians after Jesus died. And he would like literally rip them out of their homes and kill them. And then he had an epiphany one day when God spoke to him. You know, the story goes that he was knocked off his horse and Jesus literally came to him and said, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" And he was like, "What?" And at that moment, Jesus changed his name to Paul. And Paul wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. In 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4-7, what he is doing is he is explaining to believers in this letter how to conduct yourself according to love. And he's explaining that God basically said love is the greatest thing of all. Love is the greatest command of all. And here is how you are supposed to be conducting yourself in the realm of love. Here's the thing, guys. When I read this, think about how your behavior is. And when I think about the first 2 verses, love is patient and love is kind. I mean, the first word in this series of verses is patient. And how many of us, myself included, how many of us especially on this twin flame journey, have a difficult time with this concept of patience? When I think about the word patience and the word kindness or kind, of being kind, it really reflects how you treat another person. It reflects that if I'm patient with you, if I am kind to you, then I'm not going to push you in a direction that isn't good for you. I'm not going to push you in a direction that you're not ready for. I'm not going to treat you in the way that does not reflect kindness. So this is about your own self-reflection on what is your behavior toward the person that you love. And it goes on to say, love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. So we've got 4 words. We've got jealous, boastful, proud, or rude. Again, this is reflecting more of that kindness. It's reflecting not having jealousy and not being envious. In some translations, it talks about envy. Envy, saying you wish you had the house that your friend has, or you wish you had the spouse your friend has. And it really goes back to being humble, showing humility. And that says, do not be boastful or proud. That is being humble and showing humility and love, and not saying that you're better than the other person. And frankly, that is what a lot of us have issues with in love relationships, is that we take this act of superiority to the other person and we don't act with humility. We don't act with kindness. We don't act with a sense of patience, which patience is saying, like, I respect you on your journey. And it says, do not be rude. Love is not rude. And rude, again, it's always going back to that kindness. It's like, am I showing myself bigger than you, better than you, more intelligent than you? What Jesus always goes back to is this sense of humility, is this sense of peacefulness within yourself, that you know yourself well enough that you can give love freely without having ties to it because you need to boost your ego. And that's what being boastful or proud is. And being proud, showing humility, is also like, it says, do not be proud. Bring yourself to a lower level, and voluntarily, though. It doesn't mean that you're lower than the other person, but voluntarily bringing yourself to their level in the sense of, I know you're different than me, but that doesn't make me better than you. And I love this. So there are 2 verses in these lines, in these verses, that I really want to highlight. And it's important because this is where it's almost like, I don't want this to become you feeling that, okay, I've got to be patient and kind and show humility and be humble and all of these things, but where's the reciprocity in that? And that's where it comes in to not be a doormat, not have somebody walk all over you. So there are 2 lines in specific that I really want to focus on. The first one is, it does not demand its own way. Now this goes for you, and it also goes for the other party. It does not demand its own way. It's like saying, don't be controlling. Don't say that things have to be your way. And this goes vice versa as well. It is not irritable, and some translations say angry. Love is not angry. In this translation, it says love is not irritable. Again, it goes all the way back to that concept of patience and allowing the other person to be who they are. Not trying to control them, not trying to demand your own way, but letting that person be exactly as they are. And it keeps no record of being wronged. Honestly, you guys, I want to point this out about unconditional love, is that a lot of times in romantic partnerships, and believe me, I've heard it, I've read the threads of on the Twin Flame videos, and many of you out there are keeping record of being wronged. Many of you are keeping those records, and keeping those records very tightly, I might add. Believe me, I'm guilty of this too. I am totally guilty of this, but it says it keeps no record of being wronged. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not cognizant of poor behavior, that you're not cognizant of what behaviors need to be corrected if you're to re-enter into a personal relationship with that person. But it does mean that in a conversation and in subsequent conversations with people that you love, that you don't keep bringing up the past, because many people, especially in romantic partnerships, they use the past as a weapon. Here in 1 Corinthians, it says, it keeps no record of being wronged. Here is the second line that I really want to highlight, and it does not rejoice in injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Here we go. Love does not rejoice in injustice. This is where I really believe that God is speaking to us about staying in truth with love. But I always like to say that if injustice is happening in your life, and especially among the people that you love, it does not mean that you cannot love them. But what my recommendation is that if there is injustice, if you are being poorly treated, if your boundaries are being obliterated by some other person, then you can love them from afar. You can be patient from afar. You can be kind from afar. You're allowed to do that, because nowhere in the Bible about love relationships does it say you must stay in a verbally, emotionally neglectful relationship. It doesn't say any of that, or physical abuse, of course. It doesn't say that at all. But this line, it says, it does not rejoice in injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. So what I want to say to you about this line is that where is the truth in this? Where is the truth? Is the truth that every time you speak to this person that they don't speak to you with kindness or patience? Is it every time you meet with this person that they're angry or boastful or rude or proud? So, those are the things, those are the parameters that you can set and say, I love you, but I'm going to love you from over here, because what's happening right now is not just. It's not respectful to me, and it's not just. So here's how we're going to do things. We're going to do things that until you make the decision to live in the truth, and the truth is love is patient, love is kind, love is not jealous, boastful, rude, or proud. Until you decide to live in the truth, then I'm going to have to take a step away from this for now. And it says love never gives up, never loses faith, and is always hopeful. This is the sticky wicket. I'm going to tell you this right now, that this is the sticky wicket. Because if you are reading these lines as universal truth to stay in a very unhealthy situation, then that is absolutely not what the Bible intends. That's not what God intends. That's absolutely not what the intention was here. The intention was, if you are to love someone in say, for example, this is your parent or your sister or your brother or your spouse or your boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever the relationship, what it's saying is that pursue in love. And again, if you need to take that healthy distance, then that is okay. But you can still pray for that person, so staying in faith. You can stay hopeful that that person might make a change or turn around or have an epiphany or a come to Jesus moment. You can have that hope and faith, of course, because it says faith, hope, and love at the end of this passage, and the greatest of these is love. So it doesn't mean don't have faith. It doesn't mean don't have hope, but it also doesn't mean stay in injustice. It does not mean that. And it says, and endures through every circumstance. And what I believe that is saying here is that many people in loving relationships can perceive loving relationships as, I'm going to stay through the good times, but the bad times, I'm going to leave you now. And what I believe the Apostle Paul was saying here was like, just like the wedding vows are often cited as saying in good times and in bad, is sickness and in health, if you're rich or if you're poor or whatever. And what I really believe is the Apostle Paul was saying that. He was saying like it endures through every circumstance. You don't just up and leave your partner. You don't up and leave your family just because things are a little uncomfortable or the economy is bad. That's not what he was saying. And what I believe this is it's just parameters for your own self-behavior. Can you honestly check in with yourself and say that you're patient in your loving relationships? Can you honestly check in with yourself and say you do not suffer from jealousy in your love relationships? Can you check in with yourself and say that you are not boastful, proud, or rude in your love relationships? So I would say first, check in with yourself. It's easy to point the other finger. It's easy to blame the other, but check in with yourself first. And then about the line about injustice, it seriously means if there is injustice in love, then the truth does need to win out. So what does that mean for you? It means that if there are injustices in a relationship, then you need to back away until those injustices are rectified. I love this line from 1 John 4:18, and it says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made in perfect love. What I believe this means here is that when you are thinking about an unconditionally loving relationship, that unconditionally loving relationship should not in any way be fear-based. And you must remember that these parameters are for everybody. In nowhere also does it say that you must be a martyr. It really garners this sense of reciprocity, that if everybody is individually living from the aspect of unconditional love or perfect love, as John says, that really means that there's no fear inside of that relationship. If there's no fear inside of that relationship, then love is going to rule that relationship. And thus, naturally, all of the precepts which are listed in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 are going to reign, are going to rule. You need to set boundaries. You need to not have fear in relationships. If you are in a fearful state in relationships, then it becomes punishment, because it literally says fear has to do with punishment. And then finally, what I really want to drive home is that when we're talking about intimate relationships, because we are truly talking about reciprocity here, and it's not that you demand reciprocity, it's that you need to look out for reciprocity. Again, you can love somebody from afar. And when it comes to romantic partnerships, there's really only one that fits the bill, okay? In most cultures worldwide. But there's only one that fits the bill. You can be unconditionally loving toward others and humanity in general, but then, from afar. But when we're speaking about intimate relationships, including boyfriend, girlfriend, fiancés, or spouse, I really believe this idea of reciprocity is the best described in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 22 through 33. This is in the New Testament of the Bible. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people will read this, especially if you're not well-versed in Bible verses. A lot of people will read this and go, oh my God, this sounds so archaic. This sounds so backward. And it sounds so outdated. How could you even refer to this one? And what I want to say to you, though, is that if you are following the logic of the Apostle Paul as he's preaching the Word of God, if you follow the logic is the demand for reciprocity. That is the logic. The logic is don't become a doormat. That is the logic. Because the romantic partnership, the romantic relationship is the most vulnerable of all relationships. It is where you bare your soul to the other person. It is the most intimate and the most vulnerable of all relationships. And here's what I want to say about it, guys. What I want to say is that Ephesians chapter 5, verses 22 through 33 demonstrate that in this most vulnerable and intimate relationship, and in this case, they're talking about between a man and a woman, between a husband and a wife, what they are saying is that there must be reciprocity. And there is a call, a higher calling to reciprocity, that all of these things that were listed in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 have to be present on both parties in this romantic partnership. So don't think that the Bible is like a bunch of garbage. It's really well-rounded. So I'm just going to read the side of the husbands, because I know most of the people who watch this channel are in the Divine Feminine Collective. Many of you are women. I know some of you are men who are in the category of Divine Feminines. I totally get it. But for this sake, I really need you guys to understand this. I need you guys to understand that it's not about rolling over and being that doormat and having somebody walk all over you, especially your most intimate relationship. Okay? I need you guys to understand that. So in the beginning, which I'm not going to read, it talks about how wives must submit to their husbands. Now here is why, and this is where the reciprocity comes in. It says, for husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church. He gave up his life for her, so her meaning the church, to make her holy and clean, washed by the cleansing of God's word. Okay, that is mind-blowing, okay, because love is patient, love is kind, love is not jealous, boastful, proud. I mean, those are nice things, right? But here, what God is calling husbands to do, or the partner to do, is to love them in a way to give up his life. That is what the demand is. The demand is reciprocity at 100%. It's all or nothing reciprocity. It's not like, oh, I love you one day, tomorrow I'm not gonna love you. I'll love you if you're pretty forever. I'll love you if you get plastic surgery and lose some weight. I love you if you work. No, it's basically saying, this means love your wives just as Christ loved the church, for he gave up his life for her. Hello! Then it goes further. It says, in the same way, husbands ought to love their wives the way they love their own bodies. Not only does it say you must give up your life for your wife, but you must love your wife as you love your own body, meaning like your life. As you love your life and your body, you must love her. It says, for a man who loves his wife actually shows love for himself. Okay, this makes it even greater. The greater thing is it's repeated. The whole thing is repeated in verse 33. So there's other stuff in the middle, and it talks about a man leaving his mom and dad to give himself over to his wife. But in the end, it reiterates, it repeats itself. So again, I say, each man must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. Well, here's the thing, guys. If you are in a position in your most vulnerable and intimate relationship in which, these are the parameters, guys, these are the parameters in which the husband, the man, the divine masculine, whatever you want to call it, when the husband is willing to show 100% love in the most unconditional way, to give up his body, to give up his life, to give up everything for her, then why wouldn't you respect him? Of course you would respect him, because what greater love is there than the love of God? What greater love on earth is there? There is no greater love on earth. Do you understand that the Bible calls for reciprocity in intimate relationships? It's not about being a doormat, guys. It's not about being the person who has to change for the other person. It's not about having to change them or having to demand your own way. It's not about being fearful. It's not about being fearful. It's truly about showing love, doing your piece, but also staying humble, staying in humility, staying in faith. And when your romantic partner shows you that they are willing to match that unconditional love, then there is that trust in the relationship. That is what it means. Please do not misinterpret unconditional love as being something that it isn't. Remember the lines that are really, really important. Do not demand your own way. And unconditional love, or love, seeks not pleasure or rejoices not in injustice, but rejoices in the truth. And so what is the truth of the love situation in your life? What is the actual truth? I hope this helped, guys. I really, truly hoped it helped, because there's been a lot of confusion about what unconditional love is. It certainly is not self-deprecating, because in the Bible itself, it says, for a man who loves his wife actually shows love for himself. So what that tells me is that God's not asking you not to love yourself. And that includes for the other person. God is not asking you not to love yourself. But show humility, show strength, but not through boastfulness, rudeness, demanding your own way, or keeping record of wrongdoings. I hope this helped today. Happy Sunday, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for subscribing to my channel below. Click on that bell. Scroll up to all for all notifications. Give the video a thumbs up. Thank you so much for sharing this video with other twin flames. And thank you so much for supporting this YouTube channel. You can buy a book or 2 or 3. You can also pledge your support on Patreon. www.patreon.com/Michelle S. Fondin. And I will see you in the next video.